Hi, welcome to Brian Sews. Today I'm taking a look at the Kenmore 1410 Zig Zag sewing machine from the original instruction manual. This is an all-metal machine, all-metal gears. This is probably the last, you can see an all-metal cam stack here. This is probably the last of the great machines from Kenmore. It's a 1.2 amp motor, as you just saw, in class 15 bobbin case. This machine is it's a nice machine, and the reason I picked it up was specifically for doing buttonholes on it, and I'll show you why that is here in a bit. The machine has a number of utility stitches, all the good stuff you need for clothing construction. I'll show you the stitches here. I think it's funny in the picture here, the straight stitch on the left there isn't exactly perfectly straight. I don't know, probably is when you use the machine. I didn't get this machine for straight stitching though. Like I said, I got it specifically for buttonholes. This is the only machine I've ever seen that's been, at least vintage machine, that was built specifically for doing buttonholes. Another thing that's nice about this machine is it's not cast iron, it's aluminum, so it's, while heavy, it's still quite a bit easier to carry around than the machines of just a few years earlier. One of the first indicators there's something different about this machine is when you remove the bobbin cover here, you pop this off, you'll notice there's a little lever inside. I'll give you a close-up picture of that. See this little lever here? This is specifically to activate the buttonhole mechanism. So what you do is you replace the cover, the bobbin cover, with this special one that has this gear on top. You see this mechanism underneath is activated by that lever, and it turns the gear. And I'll show you how that works. Another really cool feature I think is cool about this machine, not that I'm going to be using it, is that it has this little needle plate strip with a single hole on one side and your zigzag in the other. So instead of having to change out your whole needle plate, you just simply turn this little strip of metal around and you're good to go. It's like little features like that. I feel like Kenmore really, I don't know how much this machine was back in the day, but it was a good machine for sure. So one of the differences, or one of the reasons why I am interested in this machine for doing buttonholes, is that it doesn't use all the buttonhole attachments I have use the needle bar to activate the mechanism, and that's fine. However, when you have thick fabric, what it does is it lifts the attachment up further, which changes the movement, which changes how much the needle bar will activate basically the gears inside. And the reason why that is, especially on waistbands, is because you've got, so imagine this is the top of your pants, then you're attaching your waistband on here, and you see you have all these folds of fabric that end up coming together in the same spots, and you should always try to trim off as much of that as you can, but still you end up with different layers of fabric. You've got 5 on one side, 2 on the other, plus the end, if you didn't cut the end of the waistband really short, like the seam allowance, the hem allowance inside there, then you have a lot of thickness there at the front, and oftentimes you're doing the buttonhole right in the middle. The thickness on one side of the buttonhole might be 5 layers of denim deep, and on the other side it might only be 2, and it makes for problematic buttonholes. I can't even tell you how many buttonholes I've mangled, on a pair of jeans, where it's just, sometimes I'll end up just doing them manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the style of buttonholer that I preferred to use before I got this machine. This is a Zig Zag Buttonholer, which means that it uses the machine's zigzag function in order to make the sides of the buttonhole. And of course it uses these templates. And I'm going to put in the 13/16 template now. And it just pops in the top, and you see there's the same little gear that the needle plate or the bobbin plate has. See right here, they're pretty much identical. This attachment probably came out around the same time as this machine did. Obviously, or maybe you would get it for this machine. It has more Has more styles of buttonhole, your keyhole and your eyelet and your whatnot. To attach this, we've got to take the foot off. This is a low shank, unusual, and this is a low shank Kenmore, and this is a low shank buttonholer attachment. So we'll just get a screwdriver here and take that off. Just get this done here. So these are a little tricky to get on sometimes. Got to get this little fork over the needle clamp. Sometimes it's a little. Actually, so you see this fork right here is what activates the mechanism inside the machine. And I did another video on buttonholers that you can check out, where you see it's a little bit more in depth about the actual mechanics themselves and how the different attachments work. Let's see if I can get this on here. Yes, here we go. I loosen the screw some more. This is one of the issues with these, is that they're kind of a pain to get on and off. So oftentimes if I have a machine that I'm just going to be using for buttonholes, I'll just leave everything attached and set up and ready to go. The Geist buttonholes will zigzag the fabric back and forth, so you can even do buttonholes on a straight stitch machine, which is cool, except when you're trying to do a pair of jeans, you've got a lot of weight and bulk, and you're trying to manage the jeans, and you've got to basically move the jeans back and forth with the buttonholer, trying to keep everything in sync. It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff going on, and oftentimes, it just the buttonholes just get mangled all the time with it. This one's nice in that because it uses the machine's zigzag, all it does is simply goes through, kind of the oval, we'll call it an oval, the oval shape of the buttonhole, and the machine does all the zigzagging, so it's a little less problematic using these zigzag styles. So we'll slide our fabric under here, and this is the first time I've tried this. We'll see how it goes. I've actually never used this buttonholer attachment on this machine, so see how we do here. Let's see if we can get the camera a little closer so you can see what's going on. And oftentimes what I'll do is I will hold the top of the attachment and push down on the fabric just to kind of keep everything together a little bit more, especially, like I said, when you have a whole pair of jeans under the foot. You really do need to keep everything together, and just try to keep your fingers away from the needle there. Actually, it looks like it's doing really well. So we've got it's multiple layers of fabric that it's going through. In some areas, it's all multiple layers. Some areas are just 2 layers, some layers are up to 5 layers, and they're different thicknesses, and one side of the buttonhole attachment is actually sitting up higher than the other side. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. This is probably the most challenging place to do a buttonhole that I've ever found. So let's cut the threads off and take a look here. So from the back, it looks pretty good from the back. And from the front, also good. And of course, you change the size of the width of the buttonhole with these attachments just using the zigzag. So that's about as wide a zigzag as you can get. Otherwise, what happens is the center starts getting smaller. And that is a disadvantage of the zigzag buttonholers, is that there's really a lot less adjustment. They might be a little bit more foolproof, but you can't actually change the width of the inside of the hole like you can with some of the other buttonhole attachments. So let's take this attachment off, and let's pop on the one this machine was made for specifically. All right, let's stick the foot back on here. That's a little tricky. There we go. Give it a little screw down here. So we'll pop off the bobbin cover, pop off the special buttonholer bobbin cover. I find this is a lot easier to set up if you were, taking it up and setting it, just setting it up from scratch. Just popping that cover is very easy. this is the Buttonholer attachment that you put on the machine. You can see you've got 5 different holes here, and you simply just turn the dial to select different sizes. One of the disadvantages is there's no eyelet hole, so there's less choices. Although I find that I only really, when I'm doing buttonholes, I usually use the same 2 or 3 sizes over and over. Nice thing about these kits is they come with, you've got keyhole buttonholes and regular style buttonholes and eyelets, and there's a lot more choices here. And this kit here, there's 10. I've seen some with even a few more than that. So we stick this on the machine, and there's this little set screw in the back that let's turn everything around so you can see it here. There's this little screw in the back that screws to the machine bed. Let me just screw that on. And it doesn't, it's supposed to just hold the attachment in place. The attachment will slide through the screw still. We just pick up the front and we drop it down on top of that gear. So we're starting at the top of the buttonhole, or the front, that may be. Let's go ahead and put our waistband sample together here. And load that in the machine. The foot on this machine doesn't come up particularly high, but you can lift it. It does provide quite a bit more lift with the presser foot lever, so you can get thick stuff under here. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the fabric on top of the attachment and push the whole thing down. With this attachment, there's just absolutely no possibility of the attachment itself slipping. It will work through the entire thing, but what could happen is the fabric itself could slip on top of the attachment. So I'm just going to hold it all together here. And here we go, we're working through the other side. You'll notice you can't hear the machine running because I originally recorded this with voice, and the microphone was set for the wrong level, so I'm all having to voice over this whole thing because I'm really not going to go through the trouble of recording it all again. So let's take a look and see how this buttonhole looks. And that looks pretty good as well. Let's look at the back. Yeah, it really should. The stitching itself should look identical because it's the machine doing that part of the job. And really when you look at both these holes, they are almost exactly the same. As far as the space between them goes and everything. And again, the reason why this attachment I think is going to work out much better for me is just because the thickness of the fabric has no role in how the attachment works. Since it's being moved from underneath the needle bar, it doesn't come into play with the attachment. So there you go, the Kenmore 1410, a machine that was built to do buttonholes. Thanks for watching.